Marcus Chen walked through the busy airport terminal with his small leather backpack over one shoulder. He was 42 years old, dressed in jeans, a black sweater, and comfortable sneakers. Nothing about his appearance screamed wealth or success. He looked like any other traveler heading to catch a flight on this October morning. The flight to London was important. Marcus had meetings scheduled with international partners to discuss new technology projects. But this flight was extra special for a reason nobody at the airport knew yet. Just a few hours earlier, Marcus had finalized a huge business deal. His company, Chen Innovations, had purchased 40% of Apex Airlines. The papers were signed at 6 in the morning. Marcus was now a major owner of the very airline he was about to fly on. Marcus reached Gate 42 and joined the boarding line. When his group was called, he walked down the jet bridge and stepped onto the aircraft. The first-class cabin was at the front, and that was where his seat was located. He had paid for seat 2A, a window seat in the first row. At the entrance to first class stood a flight attendant named Rebecca Winters. She was 38 years old and had worked for Apex Airlines for 12 years. Rebecca stood with perfect posture, greeting passengers with a practiced smile as they boarded. Her uniform was neat and her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Marcus approached Rebecca and held out his boarding pass. "Good morning," he said politely. Rebecca took the boarding pass and glanced at it. Then she looked at Marcus. Her smile faded slightly. She studied him from head to toe, taking in his casual clothes and young appearance. Something about the situation did not seem right to her. "Just one moment, please," Rebecca said. She waved to another flight attendant standing near the galley. "Patricia, could you come here?" Patricia Morgan walked over. She was 52 years old and had been with the airline for 23 years. She was senior to Rebecca and had a reputation for following rules strictly. Patricia looked at the boarding pass Rebecca handed her, then looked at Marcus. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked calmly. "We just need to verify something," Patricia said. She examined the boarding pass more closely, turning it over in her hands. "This seat is 2A, first class." "Yes, that's correct," Marcus replied. "That's my seat." Rebecca and Patricia exchanged a look. Other passengers were starting to board behind Marcus, creating a traffic jam in the narrow aisle. An elderly white couple squeezed past and Rebecca quickly checked their tickets and smiled brightly at them. "Welcome aboard. Enjoy your flight." Marcus noticed the difference in treatment immediately. He had traveled enough to know what was happening. It was not the first time someone had judged him by his appearance. But it still stung every single time. "Sir, could you step aside for a moment?" Patricia asked. "We need to clear the aisle." Marcus moved to the side, standing near the galley while other passengers continued boarding. He watched as Rebecca greeted each first-class passenger warmly. A businessman in an expensive suit walked past without his ticket being questioned. A woman in designer clothes breezed through with barely a glance at her boarding pass. Then an elderly white man in a polo shirt and cargo shorts approached. His clothes were more casual than Marcus's expensive sweater. Rebecca smiled at him. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to first class." She barely looked at his boarding pass before waving him through to seat 1A. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The double standard was crystal clear. Rebecca returned to Marcus after several more passengers had boarded. "Sir, I'm going to need to scan your boarding pass again." "You already scanned it," Marcus pointed out. "Yes, but I want to make sure it's valid," Rebecca said. She took out her handheld scanner and ran it over the barcode on the boarding pass. The scanner beeped and flashed green. "Valid ticket." Rebecca frowned at the screen. "The system might be having problems," she said to Patricia. "The system is fine," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. "My ticket is valid. I purchased it myself through your website. Can you show me your confirmation email?" Patricia asked. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his email app. He showed them the confirmation from Apex Airlines with all the correct details. Flight 447, October 15th, New York to London, seat 2A, first class. Rebecca glanced at the email for barely 2 seconds. "Anyone can make a fake email," she said quietly to Patricia, but Marcus heard her. "Are you accusing me of fraud?" Marcus asked. His voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. "No, sir, we're just being thorough," Patricia said quickly. "You understand we have to follow security procedures." "What security procedures?" Marcus asked. "My ticket is valid." Your scanner confirmed it. What exactly is the problem? The two women did not answer directly. Instead, Patricia said, "Sir, we actually have a very nice seat available in economy class. You might be more comfortable there." And there it was. The real issue. They did not believe a young black man in casual clothes belonged in first class. They were trying to move him to the back of the plane based purely on how he looked. Marcus took a deep breath. He had choices here. He could get angry and make a scene. He could demand to speak to the captain. He could refuse to move and force them to call security. But Marcus knew how these situations usually played out. An angry black man on an airplane often ended with that person being forcibly removed no matter who was right or wrong. He thought about his meetings in London. Important people were waiting for him. He thought about his company and his employees who depended on him. He thought about his reputation that he had carefully built over years of hard work. "I would like to speak with a supervisor," Marcus said firmly, but politely. "That won't be necessary," Rebecca said. "We just need to verify with ground control. Please continue to wait here." Marcus stood by the galley for 15 long minutes. Passengers stared at him as they walked past. Some looked curious. Others looked annoyed that there was a delay. A few looked uncomfortable, as if they sensed something wrong was happening but did not want to get involved. During those 15 minutes, more passengers boarded first class. All of them were white. Some were dressed in business attire, but others wore jeans and casual clothes just like Marcus. None of them were questioned. None of them were asked to step aside. Their tickets were barely glanced at before they were welcomed aboard with warm smiles. Marcus watched all of this with a heavy heart. He was a billionaire. He was a CEO. He had built a company from nothing and revolutionized the sustainable energy industry. He had been featured in major magazines and had spoken at international conferences. But none of that mattered right now. All that mattered was the color of his skin and the assumptions these two flight attendants had made about him. Rebecca made a show of talking on her phone, supposedly checking with various airport personnel. But Marcus noticed she was not really having detailed conversations. She was stalling, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, Rebecca approached Marcus again. Her expression was almost smug, as if she had won some kind of victory. "Sir, due to the delay and some security concerns, we have decided to reassign your seat." "What security concerns?" Marcus asked directly. Rebecca and Patricia exchanged another look. "It's just protocol," Rebecca said vaguely. "We need to follow certain verification procedures." "I've flown first class on dozens of airlines hundreds of times," Marcus said. "I have never once been subjected to these procedures. My ticket is valid. I have shown you my confirmation. Your scanner verified everything. What exactly are you verifying?" Neither woman had a good answer. The cockpit door closed. The plane was preparing to leave the gate. Time was running out. Marcus made his decision. He could fight this and probably win, but it would take time. The plane would be delayed. Security would be called. Even if he was proven right, the drama would make headlines. Billionaire CEO removed from plane would be the story, not billionaire CEO discriminated against by airline staff. "Where is my reassigned seat?" Marcus asked quietly. 34B, Rebecca said, barely hiding her satisfaction. "In the main cabin." Marcus nodded slowly. He picked up his backpack and walked toward the back of the plane. As he passed through the first-class cabin, he made eye contact with a young black woman sitting in seat 3C. She had witnessed everything. Her eyes showed sympathy and recognition. She knew exactly what had just happened because she had probably experienced similar treatment herself. Marcus continued down the long aisle to economy class. Seat 34B was a middle seat near the back of the plane. A teenage boy was sleeping in the window seat. A middle-aged man with a bad cough sat in the aisle seat. Marcus squeezed into the middle, his tall frame cramped in the tight space. The man with the cough apologized. "Sorry about the noise. I've been fighting this cold for a week." "No problem," Marcus said kindly. He pulled out some cough drops from his backpack and offered them. "These might help." The man thanked him gratefully. Across the aisle, a mother struggled with a crying toddler. She looked stressed and exhausted. When she caught Marcus's eye and mouthed an apology, Marcus smiled warmly at her and gave her an encouraging nod. Despite what had just happened to him, Marcus treated everyone around him with kindness and respect. He would not let bitterness turn him into something he was not. Up in first class, Rebecca poured champagne for the passengers who were settling into their comfortable seats. She said to Patricia, "I'm glad we caught that." Something about that ticket just seemed suspicious. Patricia nodded, though she looked slightly less certain than Rebecca. Better safe than sorry. Exactly, Rebecca agreed. You can't be too careful these days. Neither of them had any idea who Marcus Chen was. Neither of them knew they had just humiliated the man who now owned 40% of their airline. Neither of them realized how much their lives were about to change. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Morrison. We've been cleared for departure and should be wheels up in about 5 minutes. Flight time to London will be approximately 7 hours. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. As the plane pushed back from the gate, Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His phone buzzed with messages about his London meetings and the acquisition that had closed that morning. He allowed himself the smallest smile. Rebecca and Patricia had made a terrible mistake. They just did not know it yet. But they would find out soon enough. Marcus was a patient man. He believed in justice and accountability, and he believed that actions had consequences. The plane taxied toward the runway. In a few hours they would be in London, and then the truth would begin to surface. The plane climbed into the sky and leveled off at cruising altitude. Marcus sat squeezed in his middle seat in economy class. The man next to him was still coughing despite the cough drops. The teenage boy by the window slept with his head against the wall. Marcus pulled out his laptop and tried to get comfortable, which was nearly impossible in the cramped space. Across the aisle, the mother with the toddler was having a difficult time. The little girl was fussy and kept crying. The mother looked like she might cry too. Marcus caught her eye and made a funny face at the toddler. The little girl stopped crying for a moment and giggled. The mother mouthed, "Thank you," to Marcus. Up in first class, Rebecca moved through the cabin serving drinks and snacks. She chatted pleasantly with the passengers, making sure everyone was comfortable. She felt good about how she had handled the situation during boarding. In her mind, she had followed proper procedures and protected the airline. "Can I get you anything else?" Rebecca asked the elderly man in seat 1A. "No, thank you." "This is excellent," Robert Hartford replied. He was a retired investment banker with silver hair and an expensive watch. He turned to the passenger next to him, a tech executive named David Chen. "So, what brings you to London?" "Business meetings," David said. "I work in tech investments. We're looking at some interesting companies in Europe." Robert nodded with interest. "Tech is where the money is these days. I wish I had invested in more tech companies when I was younger. Do you know anything about Chen Innovations?" David's eyes lit up. "Marcus Chen's company? Absolutely. They're doing incredible work in sustainable energy. Revolutionary battery technology. Chen is a genius." Rebecca was passing by with a tray and overheard the name. Marcus Chen. It sounded vaguely familiar, but she could not place it. She continued with her service duties. "I read an article about him last month," Robert continued. He pulled out his tablet and searched for the article. "Here it is. Look at this. Youngest black CEO to make the Fortune 500 list. Self-made billionaire by age 35. Started his company with almost nothing." David leaned over to look at the tablet. "He's brilliant. I heard his company just made a major acquisition. Something about an airline, I think." Rebecca's hand froze as she was pouring coffee for another passenger. An airline acquisition? She felt a strange flutter in her stomach but pushed the thought away. There were lots of airlines. It could be any airline. Patricia walked up to Rebecca in the galley. "Everything going smoothly?" she asked. "Yes, fine," Rebecca said. But her mind was elsewhere. That name, Marcus Chen, kept bouncing around in her head. Why did it feel important? Down in economy class, Marcus was on a call using his wireless earbuds. He spoke quietly so other passengers would not hear. "Yes, the deal closed at 6 this morning," he said to his chief financial officer, Sarah Park. "We now own 40% of Apex Airlines with an option to buy the rest within 12 months. Sarah's voice came through the earbuds. "How do you feel about the purchase?" Marcus glanced around the cramped economy cabin. "Let's just say I'm getting a very educational experience with the product right now. We have a lot of work to do. What do you mean? Sarah asked. I'll explain when I see you in London, but we need to start planning major changes, training programs, policy reviews, the whole thing. This company has some serious cultural issues. Marcus ended the call and opened a spreadsheet on his laptop. He began reviewing financial data about Apex Airlines. Even in this uncomfortable middle seat, he was working. That was who Marcus was. He had not become successful by giving up when things got difficult. A few rows ahead, the young black woman from seat 3C got up to use the bathroom. On her way back, she stopped near Marcus's row. She leaned down slightly. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I'm Simone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened during boarding. I saw the whole thing, it wasn't right." Marcus looked up at her. She appeared to be in her mid-20s with kind eyes and a concerned expression. "Thank you," Marcus said. "I appreciate that. What's your name?" "Simone Williams. I'm a law student, 3rd year at Columbia." "Law school. What kind of law are you interested in?" "Civil rights," Simone said without hesitation. "I want to fight discrimination and help people who are treated unfairly. Like what happened to you today." Marcus smiled, genuinely impressed. That's important work. The world needs more lawyers like that. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a business card. "Here, when you graduate, send me your resume. My company has a large legal department. We could use someone with your passion." Simone took the card and read it. Her eyes went wide. "Marcus Chen? You're Marcus Chen? The Marcus Chen from Chen Innovations?" "That's me," Marcus said simply. Simone looked stunned. "Oh my God, I just read about you in a business law case study. You revolutionized sustainable energy storage. You're a billionaire." "Keep your voice down," Marcus said with a gentle smile. "But yes. And they made you sit back here?" Simone was outraged now. "Do they know who you are?" "They will soon enough," Marcus said. "Listen, Simone, what happened today happens to people every single day. Most of them don't have the resources or platform to fight back. That's why your work in civil rights law matters so much. You could be the voice for people who aren't heard." Simone nodded, still holding his business card like it was made of gold. "I won't let you down, Mr. Chen, and I promise next time I see something like what happened today, I'll speak up." "Good," Marcus said. "That's how change happens. One person deciding to be brave." Simone returned to her seat with renewed determination. She had witnessed injustice and stayed silent out of fear. But that was going to change. Marcus Chen had given her more than a business card. He had given her a challenge to be better. Back in first class, the plane hit some turbulence. The seatbelt sign came on. Rebecca moved quickly through the cabin, making sure everyone was secure. She was professional and efficient, checking each passenger with practiced ease. In economy class, the turbulence scared the toddler across the aisle. She started crying loudly. Marcus unbuckled just long enough to lean over. He pulled a coin from his pocket and did a simple magic trick, making it disappear and reappear behind the little girl's ear. She stopped crying immediately, fascinated. Her mother looked at Marcus with grateful tears in her eyes. "You're very good with children," the mother said. "I like kids," Marcus replied. "They see the world without all the baggage adults carry. They judge people by their actions, not their appearance." The mother understood what he meant. She had also noticed the first-class cabin was entirely white passengers. She had seen how Marcus was treated during boarding. "The world is changing," she said hopefully. "Slowly, but it's changing." "It has to," Marcus said. "And sometimes we have to force the change." The turbulence passed. The seatbelt sign turned off. Patricia stood in the first-class galley talking quietly with Rebecca. "I've been thinking about that passenger we moved to economy," Patricia said. "What about him?" Rebecca asked, a bit defensive. "His ticket scanned correctly. He had a valid confirmation email. He was calm and polite the entire time. Maybe we were too hasty." Rebecca felt a spike of anxiety. "We followed protocol." "Did we, though?" Patricia pressed. "What protocol exactly?" "We questioned his ticket even though it was valid. We made him wait while other passengers boarded without any questions." I've been doing this job for 23 years, Rebecca. I've never seen us scrutinize someone's ticket that thoroughly when it's scanned correctly. Rebecca did not want to admit what they both knew. She had made assumptions based on how Marcus looked. A young black man in casual clothes did not fit her image of a first-class passenger, so she had questioned everything about his presence, there looking for a reason to prove her assumptions correct. Let's just focus on finishing this flight professionally, Rebecca said, ending the conversation. But Patricia's words stayed with her. A seed of doubt had been planted. Had they made a mistake? Had they treated that passenger unfairly? 3 hours into the flight, Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're now halfway to London, making good time. I want to take a moment to mention something special about today's flight. Passengers looked up, paying attention. This morning, Apex Airlines finalized an exciting partnership. Mr. Marcus Chen of Chen Innovations completed the purchase of a major stake in our airline. Chen Innovations is a leader in sustainable technology, and this partnership will help us become the most environmentally friendly airline in the industry. We are honored that Mr. Chen is flying with us today to London. The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. Her face went completely white. Her hands started shaking. The coffee pot she was holding nearly slipped from her fingers. Patricia gasped audibly. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The elderly man in 1A, Robert Hartford, looked around the first-class cabin with confusion. Marcus Chen is on this plane? Where is he? I'd love to meet him. The tech executive, David, was equally confused. Why isn't he sitting up here with us? Other first-class passengers began murmuring, wondering why the airline's new owner was not in the premium cabin. Rebecca set down the coffee pot before she dropped it. Her mind was racing. Marcus Chen, the casual young man in the black sweater and jeans, the man whose ticket she had questioned, the man she had accused of having a suspicious ticket, the man she had moved to economy class. That was Marcus Chen, the billionaire, the genius, the new owner of Apex Airlines. She looked at Patricia, whose face had also gone pale. They both realized the massive, catastrophic mistake they had made. We need to check the boarding manifest, Rebecca said urgently. Her fingers trembled as she pulled up the list on her tablet. She scrolled to seat 2A. There it was in clear letters. Marcus Chen, first class, seat 2A. Oh, God, Rebecca breathed. Oh, God, what have we done? Patricia sat down heavily on a galley jump seat. That was him, the passenger we questioned. The one we moved to economy. That was Marcus Chen. All the details came flooding back to Rebecca. How she had questioned his ticket even though it scanned correctly. How she had asked if he was sure he had booked first class. How she had suggested he would be more comfortable in economy. How she had treated him with suspicion while waving through white passengers without a second glance. And now he was not just any passenger. He was the man who owned 40% of the airline. The man who could buy the rest of the airline within a year. The man who now had power over her job, her career, her entire future. What do we do? Patricia asked, her voice shaking. Before Rebecca could answer, the galley phone rang. It was the purser, Daniel Kim, calling from the upper deck crew area. Rebecca answered with a trembling hand. Rebecca, Patricia, the captain needs to speak with both of you immediately, Daniel said. His voice was tight and stressed. Rebecca's mouth went dry. About what? About the boarding incident. He just found out what happened. Call the cockpit now. Rebecca hung up and dialed the cockpit with shaking fingers. Captain Morrison answered. His voice was cold and angry. Is it true? He demanded. Did you refuse to seat Marcus Chen in first class? Rebecca tried to speak, but no words came out. Patricia took the phone from her. Yes, Captain. We questioned his ticket and moved him to economy. His ticket was valid, Morrison said. Each word was like ice. It scanned correctly. What possible reason did you have to move him? Patricia could not bring herself to say the real reason out loud. We were being cautious. Like, cautious about what? Morrison demanded. A valid ticket? A confirmation email? Or were you cautious about something else? Like the color of his skin? The accusation hung in the air. Patricia closed her eyes. We made a mistake. A mistake? Morrison's voice rose. You racially profiled the owner of this airline and humiliated him in front of a full cabin. That's not a mistake. That's discrimination. When we land, both of you will meet with management immediately. Do not approach Mr. Chen, do not speak to him. Stay in your assigned areas and complete your duties. Do you understand? Yes, Captain, Patricia whispered. The line went dead. Patricia set down the phone and looked at Rebecca. Both women had tears in their eyes. They knew their careers were over. Everything they had worked for was gone because of one terrible decision, driven by their own unconscious bias. Around them, other flight attendants kept their distance. Word had spread quickly through the crew. Everyone knew what Rebecca and Patricia had done. Everyone knew there would be consequences. Down in economy class, Marcus heard the captain's announcement. The passengers around him suddenly looked at him with recognition. The man with the cough woke up fully and stared. "You're Marcus Chen?" the man asked. "The Marcus Chen? That's me," Marcus said calmly. "And you're sitting back here in economy? Why aren't you in first class?" Marcus gave a slight smile. "Sometimes the seating arrangements don't work out as planned." The man understood immediately. His face showed anger on Marcus's behalf. "That's not right. That's discrimination." "Yes," Marcus agreed simply. "It is, but it happens every day to people who don't have my resources to fight back. That's what we need to change." In first class, Rebecca stood frozen in the galley. She could see Marcus through the gap in the curtain. He was helping the mother retrieve a toy her toddler had dropped. He was being kind and helpful despite how he had been treated. Everything she had assumed about him was wrong. He was not suspicious. He was not trying to scam the airline. He was not someone who did not belong in first class. He was a successful, accomplished man who had been judged entirely by his appearance and the color of his skin. And she had been the one doing the judging. Rebecca sank down onto the galley floor. Her legs no longer able to support her. Patricia sat beside her. They did not speak. What was there to say? They had destroyed their own careers through their own prejudice and bias. The plane continued its journey across the Atlantic. In a few hours, they would land in London. And then Rebecca and Patricia would face the consequences of what they had done. The truth was out now. There was no hiding from it. Marcus Chen knew. The captain knew. Soon everyone would know. And there was nothing they could do to take it back. The final hours of the flight felt endless. Rebecca and Patricia moved through their duties like robots. They served meals, collected trash, and answered passenger requests. But inside, they were falling apart. Rebecca kept replaying the boarding scene in her mind. She remembered the exact moment when Marcus handed her his boarding pass. She had looked at him and immediately felt doubt. Why had she doubted him? Because he was young? Because he wore jeans? Or because he was black? She knew the answer and it made her sick. "Coffee or tea?" Rebecca asked a passenger, her voice sounding hollow even to herself. The passenger looked at her strangely. "Are you all right?" "Yes, fine," Rebecca lied. "Coffee or tea?" "Coffee, please," Rebecca poured with shaking hands. Some of the coffee spilled onto the tray. She cleaned it up quickly and moved on. She could feel the other flight attendants watching her. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked disgusted. She deserved both reactions. Patricia stood in the galley staring at nothing. She thought about her 23 years with Apex Airlines. She had always been proud of her career. She had traveled the world. She had met interesting people. She had taken pride in providing excellent service, but now she saw the truth. When it mattered most, when she had the power to stop discrimination, she had chosen the easy path. Rebecca had started questioning Marcus's ticket, and Patricia had backed her up. Patricia could have said, "The ticket is valid. Let him sit down." But she had not. She had gone along with Rebecca's suspicions because deep down she had shared them. A young flight attendant named Maria Santos approached Patricia carefully. "Is there anything I can do?" Maria asked quietly. "No," Patricia said. "There's nothing anyone can do. We did this to ourselves," Maria hesitated. "I saw what happened during boarding. I felt uncomfortable watching it, but I didn't know what to say. I should have spoken up." Patricia looked at her. "Yes, you should have. We all should speak up when we see something wrong. But you didn't create this situation. Rebecca and I did. We made the choice to treat that man differently because of how he looked." Maria nodded and walked away. Patricia appreciated her honesty. So many people had witnessed the boarding incident. So many people had felt uncomfortable. But no one had said anything. Silence was its own form of participation in discrimination. Down in economy class, Marcus continued working on his laptop. He had spent hours reviewing Apex Airlines' employee training programs. He read through their diversity policies and complaint procedures. Everything looked good on paper. The airline had all the right words in their manuals. They talked about inclusion and respect and equal treatment, but words on paper meant nothing if they were not followed in practice. Two senior flight attendants with decades of experience had felt completely comfortable racially profiling a passenger. That meant the culture of the company had serious problems. Training videos and policy documents were not enough. Real change required accountability and consequences. Marcus opened an email from Victoria Blackwood, the CEO of Apex Airlines. She was currently in London waiting for him. The email had been sent an hour ago after Captain Morrison contacted her about the incident. Mr. Chen, I am horrified by what happened to you today. This is completely unacceptable and does not represent the values of Apex Airlines. I have suspended the 2 flight attendants involved and will be meeting with them personally when the plane lands. They will be terminated immediately. I am so deeply sorry. Please allow me to apologize in person when you arrive. Victoria Blackwood. Marcus read the email several times. Victoria's response was swift and decisive. She was prepared to fire Rebecca and Patricia on the spot. That was one way to handle the situation. Send a strong message. Show zero tolerance for discrimination. But Marcus was not sure that was the right answer. Firing 2 people might satisfy public anger, but would it actually change anything? Would it prevent this from happening again? Or would it just make Rebecca and Patricia into scapegoats while the underlying problems in the company remained? Marcus thought about his own experiences with discrimination. He had faced it in schools, in businesses, and banks when trying to get loans for his startup. People had constantly underestimated him, questioned him, and assumed he did not belong in rooms where he had every right to be. But he had also seen people change. He had seen people confront their own biases and genuinely grow. It was possible. It was hard, but it was possible. Marcus started typing a response to Victoria. He wanted to think carefully about what consequences would serve justice and create real change. The plane began its descent toward London. The seatbelt sign came on. Rebecca and Patricia strapped into their jump seats in the galley. They did not look at each other. There was nothing left to say. Rebecca thought about her daughter Emily, who was in college. Emily was studying social justice and had participated in protests against racism. What would Emily think when she found out what her mother had done? The shame was overwhelming. Patricia thought about her nephew, Marcus's age, who was also black. Her nephew had told her stories about being followed in stores, being pulled over by police for no reason, being assumed to be less intelligent than he was. Patricia had always listened and said supportive things. But had she really understood?
Had she examined her own biases?
Clearly not. The wheels touched down at London Heathrow Airport. Passengers applauded, as they often did on international flights. Rebecca and Patricia remained seated, their faces blank. Their careers were landing along with the plane. The aircraft taxied to the gate. Captain Morrison made his final announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London. Local time is 9:30 p.m. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. On behalf of everyone at Apex Airlines, thank you for flying with us. Rebecca thought bitterly about those words. Everyone at Apex Airlines. Soon she would no longer be part of that everyone. The plane stopped at the gate. The seatbelt sign went off. Passengers began standing and gathering their belongings. Marcus remained seated, letting others exit first. He was in no rush. He knew what was waiting for him at the gate. Simone Williams, the law student, caught Marcus's eye one more time as she deplaned. She held up his business card and mouthed, "Thank you." Marcus nodded to her. If something good could come from this terrible experience, it would be inspiring someone like Simone to fight for justice. First class emptied out. Robert Hartford and David Chen left, still talking about how strange it was that Marcus Chen had been on the plane, but not sitting with them. Other passengers filed past. Eventually Marcus stood, gathered his backpack, and walked toward the exit. Rebecca and Patricia stood in the galley, ordered to stay there until all passengers had left. Through the gap in the curtain, Rebecca watched Marcus walk down the aisle. She wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain, but Captain Morrison had forbidden them from speaking to him. And what could she possibly say that would make any difference? Marcus reached the aircraft door and stepped into the jet bridge. Standing there waiting for him was a small group of people. Rebecca could see them from her position. At the front was a tall black woman in her 50s wearing a red suit. This was Victoria Blackwood, CEO of Apex Airlines. Next to her stood two executives in dark suits and two airport security officers. Victoria stepped forward immediately. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice carrying back into the plane, "I cannot express how sorry I am about what happened to you today." Marcus shook her extended hand. "Ms. Blackwood, thank you for meeting me. Please, let's go somewhere private to talk," Victoria said. "I've arranged a conference room." The group walked away from the aircraft, their voices fading. Rebecca could no longer hear what they were saying. But she knew they were talking about her, about Patricia, about what they had done. Captain Morrison emerged from the cockpit. He looked at Rebecca and Patricia with an expression of deep disappointment. "You two need to go to the crew briefing room immediately. Ms. Blackwood and Mr. Chen will meet with you there." "Mr. Chen is going to be in the meeting?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Morrison said curtly. "You will face the man you discriminated against and explain yourselves. Now go." Rebecca and Patricia walked through the empty plane and into the terminal. Airport staff avoided looking at them. Everyone seemed to know what had happened. The story was spreading fast. They reached the crew briefing room where a union representative was already waiting. His name was Colin Davies, and he looked sympathetic but realistic. "I've been briefed on the situation," Colin said. "I'll be honest with you. This is bad, very bad. The airline will want to make an example of you. High-profile case, new owner, clear discrimination. You will almost certainly be terminated. Can you help us?" Patricia asked. "I can make sure the process is fair and that you receive any benefits you're entitled to," Colin said. "But I can't save your jobs. What you did was indefensible." Rebecca sat down at the table, her head in her hands. "I know," she said. "I know what we did was wrong. I've been thinking about it for the entire flight. I saw a young black man and I made assumptions. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I thought I was following my instincts, being careful, but my instincts were racist." Colin looked surprised by her honesty. "That's the first step, at least. Admitting what really happened." "It doesn't matter now," Patricia said. "Our careers are over. We're going to be fired and we deserve it." They sat in silence for over an hour. The waiting was torture. Rebecca's mind went to dark places. How would she pay her mortgage? How would she afford Emily's college tuition? What would she tell her family and friends? But then she thought about Marcus Chen, sitting cramped in that middle seat in economy for 7 hours. She thought about the humiliation he must have felt. She thought about all the other people who experienced discrimination every single day, without the power or resources to fight back. Maybe losing her job was exactly what she deserved. Maybe consequences were necessary for real change to happen. Finally, the door opened. Daniel Kim, the purser, stood there. His face was unreadable. "They're ready for you." Rebecca and Patricia stood on shaky legs. Colin stood with them. "Remember, let me do most of the talking," he advised. "No," Rebecca said. "I need to speak for myself. I need to face what I did." They walked down the corridor to a conference room. Through the window in the door, Rebecca could see people inside. Victoria Blackwood sat at the head of the table. Two executives sat on either side. And there, in a chair facing the door, was Marcus Chen. Seeing him again made everything real. This was not abstract. This was not just about policies and procedures. This was about a real person who she had treated terribly because of the color of his skin. Rebecca took a deep breath and opened the door. Patricia followed. They stepped into the room where their futures would be decided. The door closed behind them with a quiet click that sounded like the end of everything they had known. Victoria gestured to two empty chairs. "Sit down, please." Rebecca and Patricia sat. They could not look Marcus in the eye. The shame was too great. Victoria's voice was hard and cold. "Ms. Winters, Ms. Morgan, I want to hear directly from you what happened during boarding. No corporate language. No excuses. Just the truth." Rebecca forced herself to look up. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him. She saw his exhaustion, his dignity, his calm strength. She saw the intelligence in his eyes and the weariness of someone who had faced this kind of treatment before. "Mr. Chen," Rebecca began, her voice cracking, "I questioned your ticket because you're black. I saw a young black man in casual clothes and I didn't believe you belonged in first class. I made assumptions based on your appearance and the color of your skin. I was wrong. I was racist. And I humiliated you in front of everyone because of my own prejudice. The words hung in the air. There was no taking them back. No softening them. It was the ugly truth spoken out loud. Patricia added, I should have stopped her. I saw what was happening and I went along with it. I told myself we were being thorough, following procedures. But that was a lie. We treated you differently than every other passenger because of how you looked. I've worked for this airline for 23 years and I thought I was a good person. But today I learned that when it mattered, I wasn't. I was part of the problem. Victoria looked at both women. Her expression showed no sympathy. Do you understand the gravity of what you did? You didn't just inconvenience a passenger. You discriminated against the owner of this airline. But more importantly, you treated a human being as less than worthy of respect because of his race. Yes, Rebecca whispered. We understand. Marcus had been silent until now. He leaned forward slightly. What troubles me most is not what happened to me personally. I have resources and power. I can hold you accountable. But what about all the other passengers you've treated this way? The ones who don't own part of the airline? The ones who have no way to fight back? How many times have you made assumptions like this before? Rebecca felt tears rolling down her face. I don't know. I never thought about it before. I probably have done this to other people without even realizing it. Today it was caught because of who you are. But how many times did I treat people unfairly when no one was watching? Marcus nodded slowly. That's the real issue. That's what we need to fix. Victoria spoke up again. Which is why I've already suspended you both and prepared termination paperwork. Apex Airlines has zero tolerance for discrimination. Rebecca closed her eyes, waiting for the final blow. This was it. She was being fired. Everything was over. But then Marcus spoke again. Ms. Blackwood, I'd like to propose something different. Everyone in the room looked at him in surprise. Victoria raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Marcus looked directly at Rebecca and Patricia. I don't want them fired. At least not immediately. Rebecca's eyes went wide with shock. Patricia looked equally stunned. Even Colin, the union rep, looked surprised. What? Victoria asked. Mr. Chen, they discriminated against you. They humiliated you. Why would you want to show them mercy? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Because firing them solves nothing. They become scapegoats. The media talks about it for a week. Everyone moves on. And the culture that created this problem stays exactly the same. Then 6 months from now, different employees do the same thing to different passengers. Nothing actually changes. He looked at Rebecca and Patricia again. I want real change, not just punishment. I want these two to be part of rebuilding this airline's culture. Rebecca could barely breathe. Was he seriously giving them another chance? After what they had done? Marcus continued. Here's what I propose. Suspend them without pay for 6 months. During that time, they undergo intensive diversity and bias training, not the check-the-box corporate stuff. Real education. They meet with people who've experienced discrimination. They learn deeply about systemic racism and their role in it. Then, if they complete the program and show genuine growth, they can return to work. Victoria considered this carefully, and if I agree to this unusual arrangement, what conditions would their return include? Reduced seniority, strict probation, and 1 strike permanently on their record, Marcus said. Any future complaint of discriminatory behavior results in immediate termination. They also participate in training other employees, sharing their experience as a warning to others. They face real consequences, but they also get a chance at redemption. Rebecca stared at Marcus in disbelief. He was offering her a way forward. After everything she had done, he was giving her a chance to learn and grow and become better. Why? Rebecca asked, her voice breaking. Why would you do this for us? Marcus met her eyes steadily. Because I believe people can change. Because punishing you feels satisfying but doesn't fix the broken system. And because if you two who faced consequences for your bias can genuinely learn and grow, you can teach others. You can help create the change that prevents this from happening again. Patricia was openly crying now. What do you want from us right now? Marcus stood, picking up his backpack. I want you to think hard about the difference between the person you saw when I boarded that plane and the person sitting in front of you now. We're the same person. The only thing that changed was your information about me. Next time, treat every passenger as if they might own the airline. Or better yet, treat them like they're human beings who deserve dignity no matter who they are. He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. Ms. Blackwood will explain the details of your suspension and remediation program. I hope you take this opportunity seriously, because the next person you judge by their appearance might not be as forgiving as I am. Marcus left the room. Rebecca and Patricia sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. They had been prepared to lose everything. Instead, they had been given something unexpected and precious. A second chance. Now they had to decide what to do with it. 6 months passed. It was now April, a cold morning in London. Rebecca Winters sat in a small classroom at the Equality and Human Rights Commission Training Center. This was her final day of the remediation program. She was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. The past 6 months had drained her emotionally and spiritually, but they had also changed her in ways she never imagined possible. Beside her sat Patricia Morgan. The two women had become allies through this difficult journey. They had both been forced to look at the worst parts of themselves, and they had done that work together. It had created a strange bond between them. The first month of the program had been the hardest. Rebecca and Patricia attended workshops every single day. They learned about implicit bias, systemic racism, and the history of discrimination. They watched videos of people sharing painful experiences with racist treatment. They read books by civil rights leaders. They met with psychologists who specialized in understanding and reducing prejudice. At first, Rebecca had been defensive. She kept trying to convince herself that she was not really a racist person. It was just one mistake. It did not define who she was. She was a good mother, a good employee, a good person who had made an error in judgment. But slowly, painfully, those defenses crumbled. The trainers asked questions that she could not ignore. Why had she questioned Marcus's ticket when it scanned correctly? Why had she not questioned the elderly white man in cargo shorts? What specific thing about Marcus made her suspicious? Was it his age? His clothes? Or was it his skin color? When Rebecca finally admitted the truth to herself, she broke down completely. She had profiled Marcus because he was black. All her other explanations were just cover stories to hide that ugly reality from herself. The second month involved something even harder. Rebecca and Patricia met with people who had personally experienced discrimination. These conversations were difficult and painful. Rebecca met a man named James Thompson. He was a black executive who worked for a major corporation. James told her about being upgraded to first class on a business trip, only to have white passengers question whether he was in the right seat. He told her about being asked if he was an athlete or an entertainer, as if those were the only ways a black man could afford first class. He told her about the constant assumption that he did not belong in spaces where he had earned the right to be. Patricia met a woman named Aisha Rahman. Aisha was Muslim and wore a hijab. She told Patricia about being selected for random additional security screenings on 11 flights in a row. She told Patricia about the fear she saw in other passengers' eyes. She told Patricia about the exhaustion of constantly proving she was not a threat, just a person trying to travel like everyone else. These stories changed everything. The discrimination was no longer abstract or theoretical. It had faces and names and real pain attached to it. Patricia's real breakthrough came during a session with Dr. Imani Foster, a black psychologist who specialized in helping people understand racial trauma. Dr. Foster asked Patricia a question that shattered her remaining defenses. "Patricia, you have a daughter named Olivia, correct?" Dr. Foster asked. "Yes," Patricia answered. "She's 26. She just got her MBA. And you're very proud of her accomplishments?" "Very proud. She works so hard," Dr. Foster nodded. "Now imagine this. Olivia boards a plane. She's dressed casually because it's a long flight. She has her valid first-class ticket. But when she tries to sit down, the flight attendant questions her ticket. The attendant makes her wait while other passengers board without any questions. The attendant suggests she would be more comfortable in economy. How would you feel?" Patricia's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I would be furious. I would demand to speak to management. I would file complaints. I would want that flight attendant fired." "Why?" Dr. Foster pressed gently. "Because my daughter earned that seat. Because she deserves respect. Because she has every right to be there." "Exactly," Dr. Foster said. "Marcus Chen earned his seat too. He deserved respect too. He had every right to be there too. The only difference is that he's not your daughter, so it was easier for you to dismiss his right to dignity. That conversation changed Patricia forever. The abstract became personal. She could no longer distance herself from what she had done. Rebecca spent hours researching Marcus Chen during the program. She read everything she could find about him. She learned about his parents, who had immigrated with almost nothing. She learned about his childhood, growing up in a small apartment while his parents worked multiple jobs. She learned about his full scholarship to MIT and how he excelled there despite facing constant microaggressions and racism. She read about his first startup, which failed spectacularly and left him deeply in debt. She read about how he worked 3 jobs to pay off that debt, while developing the technology that would eventually revolutionize sustainable energy storage. She read about the investors who did not take him seriously because he was young and black. She read about the banks that refused him loans. She read about the times he was mistaken for a janitor in his own office building. Marcus Chen had faced what she did to him over and over throughout his life. And yet he had kept going. He had built an incredible company. He had created technology that would help save the planet. He had become successful beyond most people's dreams. And then he had stepped onto a plane and been treated like he did not deserve the seat he had paid for, because of his skin color, because of people like Rebecca who made instant judgments based on appearance. The shame of that realization was crushing. But it was also necessary. Rebecca needed to feel that shame. It meant she was finally understanding what she had done. The financial consequences of the suspension were severe. 6 months without pay nearly destroyed both women financially. Rebecca's savings disappeared quickly. She had to take a part-time job working retail to pay basic bills. She had to stop contributing to her daughter Emily's college fund. She had to ask her sister for a loan to avoid losing her apartment. Patricia sold her car. She moved in with her sister. She had to give up small luxuries she had taken for granted. Every day was a struggle to make ends meet. But both women came to understand that this financial hardship was necessary. They had taken away Marcus Chen's sense of security and dignity. Now they understood in a small way what it felt like to have security stripped away. The discomfort was real, but it was nothing compared to the psychological violence of discrimination. The incident had not stayed private. Within 2 weeks of the flight, the story went viral on social media. Billionaire airline owner denied first-class seat due to race became a major news story. Rebecca and Patricia's names were published in articles. Their photos appeared online. They received hate mail. People sent death threats. Online harassment was constant and vicious. Rebecca had to delete all her social media accounts. Patricia's email was flooded with angry messages calling her every terrible name imaginable. It was frightening and overwhelming. But Rebecca also received other messages. Other flight attendants and customer service workers reached out privately. Some admitted they had done similar things. Some confessed to having the same unconscious biases. One flight attendant wrote, "I've made the same assumptions you did. I just never got caught. Your story is forcing me to examine my own behavior. Thank you for being honest about what you did." Those messages gave Rebecca hope. Maybe something good could come from this nightmare. Maybe her mistake could help other people recognize and change their own biases. While Rebecca and Patricia underwent their transformation, Marcus was working to transform Apex Airlines entirely. He attended every executive meeting with Victoria Blackwood. He pushed for radical changes in company policies and culture. The airline created a new complaint system where discrimination claims were investigated by external reviewers instead of internal HR staff. This removed the conflict of interest where the company might protect its own employees rather than support passengers who had been wronged. They established employee resource groups where staff members of different backgrounds could support each other and provide input on company policies. They partnered with historically black colleges and universities to create a pipeline for recruiting diverse flight attendants and other staff. Every policy, every training program, every procedure was examined through a lens of equity and justice. It was slow, difficult work. Many longtime employees resisted the changes. But Marcus was determined. He also invested $5 million in developing a completely new employee training program, not the quick online videos that employees clicked through mindlessly. This was comprehensive, ongoing education that included real workshops, role-playing exercises, and most importantly, Sessions led by people who had experienced discrimination firsthand. Simone Williams, the law student who had witnessed the incident on the plane, became a paid consultant for the program. She shared the perspective of witnesses to discriminatory acts and talked about the complicity of silence. Her message was powerful. If you see something wrong and say nothing, you are part of the problem. 3 months into Rebecca and Patricia's suspension, Marcus held a company-wide virtual town hall. Thousands of Apex Airlines employees logged in from around the world. Marcus did not hold back. 6 months ago, 2 of your colleagues racially profiled me on one of our flights, he said directly. I was humiliated and denied the seat I had purchased. Some of you witnessed it. Others have heard about it. Today I want to address it honestly. He described the experience in detail, the questioning of his valid ticket, the assumptions made about him, the suggestion that he would be more comfortable in economy, the way he was treated differently than white passengers, the humiliation of being forced to walk to the back of the plane while others watched. Rebecca Winters and Patricia Morgan are currently undergoing intensive remediation, Marcus continued. Some people think I should have just fired them. Maybe that would have been easier. But I don't want easy. I want meaningful change. Those 2 women are facing their biases head on. They're learning and growing. When they return, they'll be valuable employees because they'll understand, deeply and personally, what discrimination looks like and how to prevent it. Then Marcus asked the question that made everyone uncomfortable. But here's what I want to know from all of you. How many of you have made similar assumptions? How many of you have treated passengers differently based on their appearance, their accent, their name, the color of their skin? Be honest with yourselves. The only reason Rebecca and Patricia got caught is because I happened to be someone with power. How many times has this happened when nobody was watching? The chat section of the virtual meeting filled with honest responses. An older flight attendant admitted, I have made assumptions. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back I can see it clearly. A gate agent wrote, I've judged people based on how they look. I assumed some people couldn't afford certain tickets. A pilot confessed, I've heard colleagues make racist jokes about passengers and I didn't speak up. The honesty was uncomfortable but necessary. Marcus nodded as he read the responses. This isn't about shame. It's about awareness and commitment to change. We're all capable of bias. The question is whether we're willing to confront it and do better. In her 4th month of the program, Rebecca wrote a letter to Marcus. She did not expect a response. She just needed to express what she had learned and felt. The letter was 5 pages long, handwritten because it felt more personal that way. She wrote about every moment of her journey. The shock of realizing who he was, the shame that followed, the defensive reaction she had initially, the slow process of breaking down her denial, the painful recognition of her own biases, the deep remorse she felt. She wrote about meeting James Thompson and hearing his stories. She wrote about the training sessions that had challenged everything she thought she knew about herself. She wrote about realizing that her bias was not conscious hatred, but something more insidious. Subconscious assumptions about who belonged where and who deserved what. I cannot undo what I did to you, Rebecca wrote. I cannot take back the humiliation or erase the pain. But I can promise you that I am not the same person I was 6 months ago. I am confronting my biases every single day. I am learning to recognize when assumptions arise and to question them. I am committed to being part of the solution instead of part of the problem. I hope that counts for something. She mailed the letter not expecting anything in return, so she was surprised 2 weeks later when a response arrived. Marcus's letter was brief but thoughtful. Your journey is important, but it's just the beginning. The real test comes when you return to work and face situations that trigger your old assumptions. That's when you'll discover if this transformation is genuine or just performance. I'm hopeful it's genuine. Prove me right. Marcus Chin. Rebecca kept that letter in her training binder. She read it whenever the process felt overwhelming, whenever she wanted to give up, whenever she doubted whether she could really change. Marcus believed she could be better. She had to prove him right. Now, on this cold April morning, Rebecca and Patricia faced their final evaluation. Dr. Imani Foster sat across from them, along with 2 other evaluators. One was a civil rights attorney named David Park. The other was a community organizer named Lisa Martinez, who worked specifically with airline employees on discrimination issues. The evaluators had reviewed everything from the past 6 months, all the journal entries Rebecca and Patricia had written, All their participation records from workshops, all the reports from their meetings with discrimination victims, essays they had written about systemic racism in the airline industry. Now came the hard questions, probing to see if their understanding was genuine or just memorized responses. "Patricia," David Park began, "tell me what you learned about the difference between intent and impact." Patricia took a deep breath. "I learned that my intentions don't matter as much as the impact of my actions. I can say I didn't mean to discriminate, but Marcus Chen still experienced discrimination. The impact on him was real regardless of my intent. I also learned that being not racist isn't enough. I have to be actively anti-racist, which means speaking up when I see bias, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's coming from people I like and work with." Lisa Martinez asked Rebecca a question. "What will you do differently when you return to work?" Rebecca answered honestly, "Everything. I will question every assumption I make about passengers. I will intervene if I see colleagues treating people differently based on appearance. I will remember that everyone deserves dignity, not because of their status or wealth, but simply because they're human beings. Most importantly, I will never forget what it feels like to be given a second chance, and I will extend that grace to others while still holding them accountable for growth." The questions continued for over an hour. Some were difficult. Some made Rebecca and Patricia uncomfortable. But they answered everything honestly, drawing on 6 months of intensive learning and self-examination. Finally, the 3 evaluators stepped outside to confer. Rebecca and Patricia waited in tense silence. This was it. The moment that would determine whether they could return to their careers or whether everything was truly lost. After 15 minutes that felt like hours, the evaluators returned. Dr. Foster spoke for the group. "You have both completed the program successfully. You have demonstrated genuine understanding, not just of what you did wrong, but of the broader systems of discrimination you were part of. You've shown real growth and real commitment to change." Rebecca felt tears of relief streaming down her face. Patricia reached over and squeezed her hand. Dr. Foster continued, "You will return to work next month under the conditions outlined by Ms. Blackwood and Mr. Chen. Reduced seniority, strict probation, and 1 strike permanently on your record. But understand this clearly. Your learning doesn't end here. This is lifelong work. You will face situations that test you. You will have moments when old assumptions try to resurface. You must remain vigilant always." "We understand," Rebecca said. "Thank you for believing we could change." Dr. Foster picked up the phone and made a call. "Mr. Chen, this is Dr. Foster. I'm calling to inform you that Rebecca Winters and Patricia Morgan have completed the remediation program successfully. I'm recommending they return to work." There was a pause as Marcus spoke on the other end. Rebecca's heart pounded. "Yes, I genuinely believe the transformation is real," Dr. Foster said. "They've put in the work. They've shown they understand what they did wrong and why it was wrong. They're ready." Another pause. Dr. Foster smiled slightly. "I'll tell them." She hung up and looked at Rebecca and Patricia. "Mr. Chen says he's looking forward to flying with you again. He wants to see firsthand how you've changed." The weight of that statement settled on both women. Marcus Chen was going to test them. He was going to get on one of their flights and see if they had truly changed, or if this was all just an act to get their jobs back. They could not fail him. They could not fail themselves. Rebecca and Patricia left the training center and stepped out into the pale April sunlight. Patricia held her Apex Airlines employee badge in her hand. It had been reactivated that morning. "We can't mess this up," Patricia said quietly. "I know," Rebecca replied. "This is our chance to prove that people can change. That redemption is possible. That second chances matter." They had confronted their biases in a safe, controlled educational setting. Now came the real test. Returning to the aircraft cabin, facing passengers every day, dealing with stress and fatigue and all the challenges of the job, and proving day after day that the change was permanent and real. Across London in the Apex Airlines headquarters, Marcus received Dr. Foster's official report confirming the completion of the program. He forwarded it to Victoria Blackwood with a brief note. "This is just the beginning. The culture change continues." He stood at his office window watching planes take off from Heathrow Airport. Each aircraft carried hundreds of passengers and dozens of employees. In every interaction, assumptions were being made, biases were at play, people were being judged. The work of transformation was never finished. But it had to start somewhere. It had started with holding 2 employees accountable, while also giving them a path to redemption. Now it would continue with systemic changes, better training, stronger policies, and a culture that valued dignity and equity for everyone. Marcus believed in second chances, but he also believed in consequences and accountability. Rebecca and Patricia had received both. Now they had to prove they deserved the grace they had been given. In 1 month they would return to work. And Marcus would be watching. 1 month later, on a May morning, Rebecca Winters stood outside the employee entrance at London Heathrow Airport. It was 5 in the morning. The sun was just starting to rise. She wore her freshly pressed Apex Airlines uniform and held her reactivated employee badge in her trembling hand. This was the moment she had been working toward for 7 months. But now that it had arrived, she was terrified. What if she failed? What if her old biases came back? What if passengers refused to accept her service because of what she had done? Rebecca scanned her badge and walked through the door. The familiar sounds and smells of the airport surrounded her. Jet fuel, coffee, the constant hum of activity. Everything looked the same, but she felt completely different. She was not the same person who had walked out of this building 7 months ago. The crew briefing room was busy when Rebecca arrived. Several colleagues were already there, preparing for their flights. When Rebecca walked in, conversation stopped. People stared. Some nodded politely but kept their distance. Others whispered to each other. A few younger flight attendants she had once mentored turned away completely. Rebecca understood. She had earned this skepticism. She had to prove herself all over again. A colleague named Maria Santos approached carefully. "Rebecca, welcome back." Her voice was neutral, neither warm nor cold. "Thank you, Maria," Rebecca said. "I know my return is complicated. I'm here to prove I've changed." Maria studied her for a moment. "I hope that's true. A lot of us were really hurt by what you did. It made us question whether we were working for a company that truly valued everyone." "I understand," Rebecca said. "I was part of the problem. Now I want to be part of the solution." Patricia Morgan arrived shortly after. She looked nervous but determined. She and Rebecca exchanged a look that said everything. They were in this together. They would support each other through whatever came next. Captain James Morrison entered the briefing room. He was deliberately assigned to their first flight back. He had been the captain on that October flight when everything went wrong. Now he would oversee their return. Morrison looked directly at Rebecca and Patricia. "Welcome back. You know you're under probation. You also know that many people here are watching, skeptical. Some are hoping you'll fail so they can say this whole redemption thing was a waste of time. I'm not here to make this easy. I'm here to see if the company's investment in your rehabilitation was worthwhile." "Prove it was." Rebecca straightened her shoulders. "We will, Captain." Morrison reviewed the flight details. London to New York JFK, 7 hours. The same route where everything had happened, just in reverse. Rebecca was assigned to first class, Patricia to business class. This was intentional. Victoria Blackwood and Marcus Chen wanted to see if they could handle the premium cabins where they had previously shown bias. Rebecca's stomach tightened, but she was ready. This was her test. She would pass it. The crew headed to the gate and boarded the aircraft. Rebecca entered the first-class cabin and began her preparations. She checked supplies, arranged the galley, and made sure everything was perfect. But her mind was focused on one thing, treating every passenger with equal dignity and respect. Boarding began. Rebecca stood at the first-class entrance, greeting passengers as they arrived. Her heart pounded, but she kept her smile genuine and warm. An elderly South Asian woman approached, wearing a beautiful sari. She handed Rebecca her boarding pass for seat 1A. 7 months ago, Rebecca might have looked at this woman and questioned whether she really belonged in first class. She might have checked the ticket twice, asked to see confirmation, made assumptions based on appearance. Today, Rebecca simply smiled. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Kapoor. It's wonderful to have you flying with us. May I help you with your bag?" "Thank you, dear," Mrs. Kapoor said warmly. Rebecca helped her store her luggage and made sure she was comfortable. It felt good. It felt right. This was how she should have been treating people all along. More passengers boarded. A businessman in a suit. A young couple holding hands. A woman traveling with her teenage daughter. Rebecca greeted each one with the same warmth and professionalism. No assumptions, no judgments, just service. Then a young black man appeared at the first-class entrance. He looked about 25 years old. He wore athletic pants, a hoodie, and expensive sneakers. He had headphones around his neck and carried a designer backpack. Rebecca's brain immediately started its old pattern. The automatic assumptions began to form. Does he really belong here? Is his ticket legitimate? Should I check it more carefully? But now Rebecca recognized what was happening. She could see her bias trying to activate. She paused, took a breath, and made a conscious choice to reject those thoughts. "Good morning," Rebecca said with genuine warmth. "Welcome to first class." She took his boarding pass and scanned it with the same efficiency she used for every passenger. No extra scrutiny, no suspicious looks, no questioning. The young man's ticket was valid, just like she knew it would be. "You're in 3B, the aisle seat," Rebecca said with a smile. "Can I help you with anything?" The young man looked surprised by her friendly tone. "No, I'm good, thank you." As he walked to his seat, Rebecca realized she was sweating slightly. That moment had been hard. Her old instincts had tried to take over, but she had caught them and made a different choice. That was growth. That was change. In business class, Patricia faced her own test. A Latino family boarded. Parents and 2 teenage children. They had several bags and were speaking Spanish to each other. The mother looked nervous, as if expecting to be challenged. Patricia felt her old assumptions rising. Were they in the right section? Did they understand where they were going? Should she verify their tickets? But then Patricia remembered Dr. Foster's question about her daughter Olivia. How would she feel if Olivia was treated with suspicion just for being who she was? Patricia approached the family with a warm smile. "Buenos dias, welcome aboard. Can I help you find your seats or store your luggage?" The relief on the parents' faces was immediate and visible. The father smiled broadly. "Thank you so much. We appreciate your kindness." Patricia helped them get settled. As she walked away, she felt tears pricking her eyes. This was what service was supposed to be. Helping people, making them comfortable, treating them with respect, not judging them, not profiling them, not making them feel unwelcome. 40 minutes. Into boarding, a figure appeared at the first-class entrance that made Rebecca's heart stop completely. Marcus Chen, wearing jeans and a casual blazer, holding his boarding pass, looking directly at her. This was the moment, the ultimate test, facing the man she had wronged, proving she was different now. Rebecca's hands wanted to shake, but she kept them steady. Her voice was calm and professional. "Good morning, Mr. Chen. Welcome aboard. May I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it to her. Rebecca scanned it without any hesitation, without any suspicion, without any of the doubt she had shown 7 months ago. She treated him exactly as she had treated every other passenger that morning. "You're in seat 2A, the window seat," Rebecca said. "May I take your bag for you?" "I've got it, thank you," Marcus replied politely. "Perfect. We'll be departing shortly. Can I offer you something to drink before takeoff?" "Water would be great." Rebecca brought him water promptly with the same efficiency and warmth she had shown everyone else. No excessive deference, no awkward overcompensation, just normal, professional service. That was what Marcus deserved. That was what everyone deserved. The plane pushed back from the gate. Rebecca moved through the cabin doing final checks before takeoff. She noticed a young Arab man in seat 4B. Another flight attendant, someone, who had not been through Rebecca's training, approached him with a slight frown. "Excuse me, sir, I need to verify your ticket," the other attendant said to the Arab passenger. Rebecca immediately recognized what was happening, the same racial profiling she had done to Marcus. She moved quickly to intervene. "It's okay. I've already verified all the first-class tickets," Rebecca said smoothly to her colleague. "Everything is in order." The other attendant looked surprised but stepped back. The young Arab man settled into his seat, unaware of what Rebecca had just prevented. That was part of the change Marcus wanted. Not just stopping discrimination, herself, but actively preventing it when others tried to do it. The flight took off smoothly. 3 hours into the journey, during a quiet moment, Marcus approached the galley where Rebecca was preparing a service cart. "Ms. Winters," he said. Rebecca turned to face him. Her heart raced, but she met his eyes. "Mr. Chen, I've been watching how you've handled this flight," Marcus said. "That young man in 4B, you treated him differently than you would have 7 months ago." Rebecca nodded. "Yes, 7 months ago I would have questioned his ticket myself. I would have made assumptions about him based on how he looked. Today I recognized that impulse and rejected it. More than that, I stopped a colleague from doing the same thing." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because profiling is wrong, no matter who does it. Because that young man deserves to board a plane without being made to feel like a suspect. Because I know what it feels like to have your assumptions challenged, and I never want to make someone else feel the way I made you feel." Marcus studied her carefully. "I'm not going to congratulate you for treating people with basic respect. That's the minimum standard, not an achievement." "You're right," Rebecca agreed. "I don't want praise for doing what I should have been doing all along. I just want to prove that giving me a second chance wasn't a mistake." "Ask me again in a year," Marcus said. "Change isn't one flight, it's every flight, every day, every interaction. But this is a good start." He returned to his seat. Rebecca exhaled slowly. She had passed this test, but Marcus was right. This was just one flight. She had to prove herself over and over, day after day, until treating people with dignity became so natural that she did not even have to think about it. In business class, Patricia dealt with her own challenge. A white businessman in an expensive suit snapped his fingers at her to get her attention. 7 months ago, Patricia might have hurried to serve him, giving him priority because he looked wealthy and important. Today, she approached calmly. "Sir, I'll be happy to help you, but please don't snap your fingers at me. The call button works perfectly, or you can simply raise your hand." The man looked annoyed. "I'm a platinum member. I expect better service than this." "And you'll receive excellent service," Patricia said politely but firmly. "But respectful service goes both ways. How can I help you?" The man sputtered, but eventually asked for a drink. Patricia got it for him with perfect professionalism. As she walked away, she noticed a black woman in the row behind who had witnessed the exchange. The woman caught Patricia's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Patricia realized something important. She was not just changing how she treated passengers of color. She was changing how she allowed any passenger to treat her. She was demanding respect while giving it. That was what dignity meant. It went in all directions. The flight landed at JFK Airport in New York smoothly. As passengers prepared to deplane, several thanked Rebecca and Patricia by name. Marcus was among the last to leave. He paused at the exit. "Ms. Winters, Ms. Morgan." They both turned to face him. "Keep doing the work," Marcus said simply. It was not overwhelming praise, but it was acknowledgement. They had passed the first test. As Marcus disappeared down the jetway, Rebecca and Patricia exchanged a look of relief mixed with determination. One flight down, thousands more to go. Every single flight would be a test. Every single day would require them to choose to be better than they had been. Later that day, the crew gathered for their debriefing. Captain Morrison reviewed the flight. He looked pointedly at Rebecca and Patricia. Today's flight was professional, efficient, and handled with dignity. Every passenger was treated with appropriate respect. That's how it should always be. He paused. "Rebecca, Patricia, you took the first step in proving your rehabilitation was genuine. Don't get comfortable. The real test is sustaining this every day, flight after flight, when nobody is watching, when you're tired and stressed, when your old patterns try to come back." "We understand, Captain," Rebecca said. That evening, Rebecca checked her email and found a message from Victoria Blackwood. Captain Morrison filed his report. Marcus sent his observations. Both were positive. "I'm cautiously optimistic. Remember, you're not just flight attendants now. You're representatives of what transformation can look like. The company is watching, the industry is watching. More importantly, every passenger you serve is watching. Don't let anyone down, but especially, don't let yourselves down." Rebecca sat in her hotel room that night, exhausted but satisfied. She had done it. She had faced Marcus Chen and proved she was different. She had caught her own biases trying to resurface and rejected them. She had intervened to stop discrimination by someone else. But Victoria and Captain Morrison were right. This was just one day. Tomorrow she would have to do it again. And the day after that, and the day after that, transformation was not a destination. It was a journey that never ended. Patricia called Rebecca that night. "We did it," Patricia said. "We made it through the first flight." "We did today," Rebecca replied. "Tomorrow we have to do it again." This is our life now. Constantly checking ourselves, constantly choosing to be better, constantly proving that second chances matter. "I'm ready," Patricia said.
Are you?
"I am," Rebecca answered. "Let's prove that people can change." Over the following months, Rebecca and Patricia kept their promise. They worked their flights with professionalism and dignity. They treated every passenger equally regardless of appearance. They intervened when they saw colleagues making assumptions or treating people unfairly. They became mentors to newer employees, sharing their story not as heroes but as warnings about what happens when you let bias control your actions. It was uncomfortable work. Some employees resented them, seeing them as management's tools. Some passengers recognized their names from the news stories and treated them with suspicion. But slowly, measurably, they made a difference. Other flight attendants started adopting better practices after working with them. Complaints about discrimination on flights where Rebecca and Patricia worked dropped to zero. Their example showed that transformation was possible if people were willing to do the difficult work. Marcus continued to fly regularly on Apex Airlines, sometimes in first class, sometimes in economy. He was testing the culture change throughout the airline. Rebecca and Patricia were not always on his flights, but when they were, they treated him exactly as they treated every other passenger. With respect, with dignity, without any special treatment or acknowledgement of their shared history. That was what Marcus wanted. Not to be treated special because he was the owner, just to be treated like a human being who deserved basic respect. 1 year after the original incident, Rebecca and Patricia were called to a meeting with Victoria Blackwood and Marcus Chen. They entered nervously. Unsure what to expect, Victoria spoke first. "1 year ago, you returned to work under strict probation. We've monitored your performance closely. You've had 0 complaints. You've received numerous commendations from passengers. You've become valuable voices in our culture change efforts." Marcus added, "More importantly, from what I've observed flying regularly, you've influenced others. Flight attendants who work with you adopt more equitable practices. The change is spreading," Victoria continued. "We're lifting your probation. You're returning to full employee status with your seniority restored." Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for believing we could change." Marcus's expression was serious. "Don't thank us. Thank yourselves for doing the hard work. But remember, this isn't the end. You'll face new challenges and new situations that test you. Stay vigilant. Stay committed. Never stop questioning your assumptions." "We won't," Patricia promised. This is who we are now. 6 months after that meeting, Rebecca was working a flight from London to Tokyo. A young black woman in casual clothes boarded first class with a ticket for seat 1A. Rebecca greeted her warmly. No hesitation, no questions, no assumptions. As the woman settled into her seat, she looked at Rebecca's name tag. "You're Rebecca Winters. I know your story. What happened with Marcus Chen?" Rebecca tensed, prepared for judgment. The woman continued, "I'm a travel blogger. I fly constantly. Usually I'm scrutinized, questioned, assumed to be in the wrong cabin because I'm black and young. Today you treated me like any other passenger. You have no idea how much that means." Rebecca felt a wave of emotion. "Thank you for telling me. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Treat everyone with the respect they deserve." The woman smiled. "Keep doing it. The world needs more people willing to change and grow." As the aircraft took off, Rebecca looked out at the dark sky. She thought about the journey from that terrible October morning to this moment. The transformation had not been easy. It required confronting ugly truths about herself, dismantling assumptions built over a lifetime, and committing to constant self-examination. She was not perfect. She still caught biased thoughts arising sometimes, but now she recognized them immediately and chose differently. That was the difference. She was aware now. She was accountable. She was better. In New York, Marcus sat in his office reviewing Apex Airlines' quarterly reports. Discrimination complaints were down 73% from 2 years ago. Employee satisfaction among staff of color had improved significantly. Customer feedback from diverse passengers showed marked improvement. The airline had not achieved perfection. Problems remained. Vigilance was still necessary. But progress was real and measurable. Marcus thought about Rebecca and Patricia, two people who could have been simply fired and forgotten. Instead, they became symbols of transformation. They proved that people could change if given accountability, consequences, and a path to redemption. Sometimes grace and accountability together created more change than punishment alone. 5 years after the incident, Rebecca led a training session for new Apex Airlines employees. She shared her story completely honestly, holding nothing back. The assumptions she made, the harm she caused, the journey of transformation, the ongoing work of staying aware. A young flight attendant raised her hand. "Do you ever worry you'll slip back into old patterns?" Rebecca answered truthfully. "Every day. That's why I stay conscious. That's why I question my assumptions constantly. That's why I surround myself with people who will hold me accountable. Transformation isn't a destination you reach and then you're done. It's a choice you make every single day." As the session ended, Rebecca saw her daughter Emily in the doorway. Emily had been devastated when the incident first happened. She had been ashamed of her mother. But seeing Rebecca own her mistake, do the hard work of change and commit to being better had transformed their relationship. Now there was pride in Emily's eyes. Rebecca realized this might be the greatest gift of her transformation. Teaching her daughter that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. That evening, Rebecca received a package. Inside was a note from Marcus Chen and a framed photograph. The note read, "5 years ago you made a terrible mistake. You've spent every day since working to be better. That's all any of us can do. Keep going." The photograph showed an Apex Airlines aircraft, newly retrofitted with Chen Innovations sustainable technology, flying into a brilliant sunrise. The airline's logo had been redesigned to be more modern and inclusive, representing the transformation of the entire company. Rebecca hung the photo in her living room. It was a reminder of the worst day of her professional life and everything that came after. Not redemption, because that word was too clean for the messy, ongoing work of change, but progress, accountability, growth, and the long, difficult journey toward becoming better than she had been. 5 years had passed since that October morning when everything changed. Rebecca Winters stood in front of a classroom at the Apex Airlines Training Center in London. 20 new flight attendants sat before her, fresh-faced and eager, ready to start their careers. They had no idea what Rebecca was about to share with them. "My name is Rebecca Winters," she began. "I've been a flight attendant for 17 years. And 5 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my professional life. I racially profiled a passenger and denied him the seat he had paid for. That passenger was Marcus Chen, the man who now owns this airline." The room went silent. Every eye was fixed on Rebecca. Some of the trainees had heard rumors about this story, but hearing it directly from the person involved was different. Rebecca continued without holding anything back. "I saw a young black man in casual clothes approaching first class, and I immediately assumed he did not belong there. I questioned his valid ticket. I made him wait while I waved white passengers through without any scrutiny. Eventually, I moved him to economy class. I humiliated him in front of a full cabin of passengers." She paused, letting the weight of that confession settle. "I told myself I was being careful, following procedures, protecting the airline. But that was all a lie. I told myself to hide the real truth. I profiled him because he was black. I made assumptions based on the color of his skin and nothing else." A young trainee raised her hand tentatively. "What happened after that?" Rebecca walked them through the entire story. The moment when the captain announced Marcus's identity, the horror of realizing what she had done, the meeting where she expected to be fired, Marcus's surprising decision to give her a second chance with strict conditions, the 6 months of intensive remediation training, the painful process of confronting her own biases. "I lost 6 months of pay," Rebecca said. "I nearly lost my apartment. I had to take a second job to survive. I received death threats. My name was all over the news. My daughter was ashamed of me. I lost friendships. I earned all of that." Another trainee spoke up. "But you got your job back. How? Because I did the work, Rebecca said simply. Real work. Not just saying sorry, but actually examining why I had those biases and how to change them. I met with people who had experienced discrimination. I learned about systemic racism and my role in it. I had to look at the ugliest parts of myself and decide to be different. Rebecca pulled up a slide on the screen behind her. It showed a simple checklist she had created for herself. This is what I do before every flight, even now, 5 years later. I remind myself that my assumptions about people are often wrong. I commit to treating every passenger with equal dignity. I promise to speak up if I see discrimination. I check my biases constantly because they don't just disappear. They're always there waiting to influence my actions if I'm not careful. A trainee in the back row asked the question Rebecca had been waiting for. Do you ever worry you'll do it again? Make the same mistake? Every single day, Rebecca answered honestly. That fear keeps me vigilant. The moment I think I've solved the problem completely is the moment I'm most at risk of falling back into old patterns, so I stay aware. I question myself. And I surround myself with people who will hold me accountable. She advanced to the next slide, which showed statistics. Since implementing new training and accountability measures, discrimination complaints at Apex Airlines have dropped by 73%. Employee satisfaction among our diverse staff has increased significantly. Customer feedback from passengers of all backgrounds has improved dramatically. Change is possible when we commit to it. Rebecca spent the next hour walking through specific scenarios. What to do when you catch yourself making an assumption about a passenger. How to intervene if you see a colleague treating someone unfairly. How to provide excellent service to everyone without profiling or prejudice. At the end of the session, a young black woman approached Rebecca. Thank you for sharing your story, she said. I've experienced what Marcus Chen went through. Multiple times, on different airlines. It's exhausting to constantly prove I belong in spaces I've paid to be in. Knowing that you recognize what you did wrong and work to change gives me hope. Rebecca felt tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry you've had to go through that. It shouldn't happen to anyone. I'm committed to making sure it doesn't happen on my flights or anywhere I have influence. The young woman nodded. Keep telling your story. It matters. After the training session ended, Rebecca walked through the airport. She saw flight crews preparing for departures, passengers checking in, families saying goodbye. Every interaction was an opportunity for dignity or discrimination. Every moment was a choice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Morgan, who was currently on a flight to Singapore, just intervened when a colleague was about to profile a Muslim passenger. Remember what we learned? Staying vigilant. Hope your training session went well. Rebecca smiled and texted back. Session went great. You're doing important work. Proud of us for staying committed. She and Patricia had remained close through these 5 years. They understood each other in ways no one else could. They had walked through fire together and come out changed. Now they used their experience to help others avoid making the same mistakes. Rebecca's next flight was not until tomorrow, so she stopped by the Apex Airlines headquarters to drop off some paperwork. As she walked through the modern office building, she noticed how different the company looked now. The staff was visibly more diverse. Photos on the wall showed employees and passengers of all backgrounds. The company values posted in the lobby emphasized equity, dignity, and inclusion. In the elevator, Rebecca rode up with a young man she did not recognize. He wore a visitor badge. First time here? Rebecca asked politely. Yes, he said with a slight accent. I'm interviewing for a pilot position. I'm nervous. You'll do great, Rebecca encouraged him. This company values talent and dedication. They care about who you are and what you can do, not what you look like. The young man looked relieved. That's good to hear. I've interviewed at other airlines where I felt like they had already decided against me before I even spoke. Rebecca knew that feeling all too well now, even though she had once been part of creating it. That won't happen here. And if it does speak up, this company takes discrimination seriously now. The young man thanked her and got off at the next floor. Rebecca continued up to the executive level. She had a brief meeting scheduled with Victoria Blackwood to discuss expanding the training program to other airlines. What had started as Apex's response to one terrible incident had become a model that other companies wanted to learn from. Victoria greeted Rebecca warmly in her office. Rebecca, thank you for coming. I watched the recording of this morning's training session. You were excellent. Raw, honest, impactful. Thank you, Rebecca said. It never gets easier to tell that story, but it's necessary. Victoria nodded. 3 more airlines have contacted us wanting to implement similar training programs. They've heard about our results and want to replicate them. Would you and Patricia be willing to help develop training for other companies? Rebecca thought about this carefully. That would take us away from flying regularly. I don't want to lose touch with the actual work. You could do both, Victoria suggested. Fly part-time, train part-time. Share your expertise with the industry while staying grounded in the day-to-day reality of the job. Let me talk to Patricia, Rebecca said. If she's interested, then yes. We can help other companies create real change. After the meeting, Rebecca walked to the office wing where Marcus's company had set up space. Chen Innovations had fully acquired Apex Airlines 2 years ago, making Marcus the majority owner, but he had kept Victoria as CEO, trusting her leadership and commitment to change. Marcus's assistant said he was in a meeting, but he had left something for Rebecca. She handed over a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Rebecca, I heard you're training new employees today. Thank you for continuing to share your story and help others learn from your experience. It takes courage to be vulnerable about our failures. That courage creates change. Keep doing the work, Marcus. Rebecca held the note carefully. She had a small collection of these notes from Marcus over the years. He sent them occasionally, always encouraging, always pushing her to keep growing. Their relationship had evolved into something unusual. Not quite friendship because the history was too complex, but mutual respect, an understanding that they were both committed to the same goal, creating a world where what happened on that October flight never happened to anyone again. That evening, Rebecca had dinner with her daughter Emily, who was now working as a civil rights attorney. Emily had been inspired by her mother's journey to pursue justice work professionally. How was your training session today? Emily asked. Emotional, as always, Rebecca said, but important. One of the trainees came up afterward and thanked me for being honest about what I did. She said it gave her hope. Emily smiled. I'm proud of you, Mom. I know I said some harsh things 5 years ago when this all happened. I was angry and hurt and ashamed. But watching you do the work to change, refusing to make excuses, taking full responsibility, that taught me more about accountability and growth than anything I learned in law school. Rebecca reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. Thank you for not giving up on me. Your disappointment in me was one of the hardest parts of that whole experience, but it also motivated me to be better. You are better, Emily said. And you're helping other people be better too. That matters. They talked about Emily's current cases, including one involving discrimination against passengers with disabilities at a different airline. Emily was using some of the training materials Rebecca had helped develop as evidence of industry best practices. You've created something that extends far beyond just you, Emily said. The work you and Patricia have done is becoming the standard for how airlines should handle these issues. That's your legacy now. Later that night, Rebecca sat in her apartment looking at the framed photograph Marcus had sent her years ago. The Apex Airlines plane flying into the sunrise. She thought about how far they had all come. The airline had been transformed. The culture had changed from one where discrimination could happen without consequences to one where equity and dignity were core values backed up by real action. Rebecca herself had been transformed. She was not the same person who had profiled Marcus Chen. She had done the painful work of examining her biases, understanding where they came from and actively choosing different behavior every single day. But the work was never done. Tomorrow she would fly again. She would greet passengers and make dozens of small choices about how to treat people. Each choice would be an opportunity to live her values or slip back into old patterns. She had to stay conscious and committed always. Her phone rang. It was Patricia. Hey, I'm back from Singapore. Coffee tomorrow before your flight? Absolutely, Rebecca said. How was your trip? Good. Challenging. I caught myself making an assumption about a passenger and had to correct it in real time. Still happens sometimes, but I catch it faster now. Same, Rebecca said. I don't think the automatic thoughts ever completely go away. We just get better at recognizing and rejecting them. That's the work, Patricia agreed. See you tomorrow. The next morning, Rebecca put on her uniform and headed to the airport for a flight to Dubai. As she walked through the terminal, she passed travelers of every background, color, religion, and nationality. Each person deserved to be treated with dignity. Each person deserved respect. Each person belonged in whatever space they had earned the right to be in. Rebecca boarded the aircraft and prepared the first-class cabin for passengers. The routine was familiar, but she never took it for granted. This job was a privilege and a responsibility. Every interaction mattered. Boarding began. An Arab man in traditional dress approached with his first-class ticket. Rebecca greeted him with a warm smile. No hesitation, no assumptions. "Welcome aboard, sir. So glad to have you flying with us today. A South Asian family with 3 children. Welcome. Let me help you get settled." An elderly black woman using a cane. "Take your time, ma'am. I'll make sure you're comfortable." A young white man in a tank top and flip-flops. "Welcome to first class. Can I help with your bag?" Every passenger received the same warm greeting, the same efficient service, the same dignity and respect. That was how it should be. That was what she had learned through painful experience. That was what she committed to every single day. Halfway through boarding, Rebecca looked up and saw a familiar face. Marcus Chen, boarding pass in hand, approaching first class. He flew regularly, sometimes first class, sometimes economy, always testing the culture of his airline. "Good morning, Mr. Chen," Rebecca said with a professional smile. "Welcome aboard." "Good morning, Rebecca," Marcus replied. "How have you been?" "Good, busy with training sessions and flights. Trying to make a difference." "You are making a difference," Marcus said. "Keep it up." He settled into his seat, just another passenger receiving excellent service. That was what he wanted. Not special treatment, just the respect and dignity every human being deserved. As the plane pushed back from the gate and taxied toward the runway, Rebecca looked out at the busy airport. Thousands of people traveling every day, thousands of interactions between staff and passengers, each one an opportunity for bias or dignity, discrimination or respect. The work of transformation was never finished, but it continued, one flight at a time, one interaction at a time, one choice at a time. Rebecca thought about that October morning 5 years ago. The worst mistake she had ever made. The moment that could have destroyed her life but instead became the catalyst for profound change. She had been given something rare and precious, a second chance. Not everyone who made mistakes received that grace. Not everyone had someone like Marcus Chen who believed in redemption, while also demanding accountability. Rebecca had tried to honor that gift every day since. By doing the hard work of change, by sharing her story honestly, by helping others learn from her mistakes, by treating every passenger with the dignity she should have shown Marcus from the very beginning. The plane lifted off, climbing into the morning sky. Inside, passengers settled in for their journey, unaware of the history between their flight attendant and the man in seat 2A, unaware of the transformation that had taken place, unaware of the daily choice Rebecca made to be better than she had been, but they would experience the result of that transformation. They would receive excellent service without discrimination. They would be treated with dignity regardless of their appearance. They would belong in the space they had paid for without question or suspicion. That was Rebecca's legacy now. Not the terrible things she had done, but the work she had done afterward. The growth, the accountability, the commitment to being part of the solution instead of part of the problem. As the plane leveled off at cruising altitude, Rebecca began the beverage service. She moved through the cabin with professionalism and warmth, treating each passenger as the unique individual they were. When she reached Marcus, she asked, "What can I get for you, Mr. Chen?" "Water would be perfect, thank you." Rebecca brought his water, set it down with a smile, and moved on to the next passenger. No drama, no awkwardness, just a flight attendant serving a passenger with dignity and respect. Exactly as it should have been from the beginning. Exactly as it would continue to be, one flight at a time for the rest of her career. The work of transformation was never done. But it continued every single day and every choice to be better than before. And that, Rebecca had learned, was what redemption really meant. Not a single moment of forgiveness that erased the past, but a lifetime of choices to be worthy of the grace she had been given. A lifetime of work to ensure that the mistakes she made would help prevent others from making the same one. 5 years later, the work continued. And it would continue for as long as Rebecca wore the uniform and served passengers on flights around the world. She had been given a second chance. She would spend the rest of her career proving it was not wasted. The plane flew on through clear skies toward Dubai. carrying passengers of every background to their destinations. Inside, a flight attendant who had learned the hard way about bias and dignity continued her work. Imperfect but committed, flawed but growing, human but trying every day to be better. And somewhere in seat 2A, Marcus Chen looked out the window at the clouds below, satisfied that the painful lesson from 5 years ago had created real, lasting change, not just in 2 flight attendants but in an entire airline and beyond. The journey was far from over, but it was heading in the right direction, one flight at a time, one choice at a time, one person at a time. That was how transformation happened. That was how the world changed. Not through perfection, but through people willing to face their failures, do the hard work of growth, and commit to being better every single day. The plane continued its journey across the sky, carrying all of them forward into an uncertain future, but a future where dignity and respect were not just ideals but practiced realities, where second chances were possible for those willing to do the work, where transformation was not just a word but a lived experience, and that was everything.